The keys felt heavy in my hand as I stood in my parents' living room, watching my father's face turn from confusion to pure rage. I had just handed my younger brother Tyler the deed to a $400,000 house at his college graduation party. Madison, my golden sister, sat frozen on the couch with her law school loan documents spread across the coffee table like a map to my money. My father's voice shook the windows when he screamed those words that revealed everything about our family. That money was for her loans. Not a question, not a request, but a statement of ownership over wealth I had built while they ignored me. Growing up as the middle child in our suburban Minneapolis home taught me the art of being invisible long before I learned it could be my greatest weapon. Madison came first, 3 years before me, emerging into the world with our mother's beauty and our father's charm, a combination that made her the sun around which our family orbited. Then came me, Candace. Unremarkable in their eyes, good at math, but who cares about numbers when your sister can light up a room? 5 years after me came Tyler, born with dyslexia that my parents saw as a defect rather than a difference, writing him off before he could even write his own name. My earliest memories involve watching Madison receive standing ovations at school plays while I sat in the audience with perfect test scores folded in my backpack, never mentioned at dinner. She was the one they introduced first at family gatherings, the one whose photos dominated the mantle, the one whose future they planned with the intensity of military strategists. Law school was decided for her before she finished middle school, our parents convinced she would become the family's crown jewel, elevating our middle-class status to something greater. I discovered coding at 14, teaching myself Python on a borrowed laptop from the school library because my parents said we couldn't afford a computer for me. That same year, they bought Madison a brand new car for her 16th birthday, a silver sedan that cost more than 4 years of the computer science courses I wanted to take. I remember sitting at the kitchen table, listening to them discuss payment plans for Madison's car while I printed my code on the school printer, unable to test it at home. Tyler struggled through elementary school, each parent-teacher conference becoming another opportunity for our parents to sigh dramatically about their burden. They never investigated learning differences, never sought help, just accepted that Tyler was their disappointment, while Madison was their hope, and I was their afterthought. I tutored Tyler in secret, spending hours creating visual learning tools that worked with his dyslexia, watching him bloom when someone actually believed in him. Our parents never noticed his improvements, too busy driving Madison to debate tournaments and college prep courses. By high school, I was working 20 hours a week at a local tech repair shop, saving every penny while Madison spent freely on clothes and social events funded by our parents' credit cards. They justified it as investing in her future, saying her appearance and connections mattered for her law career. My clothes came from thrift stores, but I didn't mind because each dollar saved was a dollar toward my escape. My mother actually said the words that would echo in my mind for years. Candace won't need much for herself. Tech people don't care about fancy things. She'll be happy to help Madison succeed. They had my entire financial future mapped out as a subsidy for my sister's dreams, never once considering that I might have dreams of my own. The spreadsheet included percentage breakdowns, with 40% of my projected income allocated to family support, which meant Madison. They discussed it with the casual certainty of people planning a vacation, never doubting that I would comply. That night, I made a decision that would define the next decade of my life. I would become successful beyond their wildest calculations, and they would never see a penny they hadn't earned. College became my sanctuary and my battleground simultaneously, a place where I could finally pursue my passion while maintaining the elaborate deception that would protect my future. I arrived at the University of Minnesota with a partial scholarship and 3 part-time jobs already lined up, having spent the summer after high school graduation establishing connections and opportunities my family knew nothing about. While Madison posted constantly about her private university experience, the parties and spring breaks funded by our parents, I disappeared into computer labs and libraries, becoming a ghost in my own family's narrative. My schedule was brutal by choice. Classes from 8 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon, tutoring other students from 2 to 5, working at a campus IT help desk from 6 to midnight, and then coding my own projects until 3 in the morning. Weekends meant additional shifts at a local startup doing basic database management and teaching coding workshops at the community center. I lived on 4 hours of sleep and instant ramen, but every exhausting day was a brick in the foundation of my future empire. The deception began small. When my parents called to check in, which was rare, I told them about struggling with coursework, about how competitive the tech field was, about barely making ends meet. I crafted a character for them, struggling Candace, who was doing her best but would never achieve the heights they imagined in their spreadsheets. When they visited once during my sophomore year, I borrowed a friend's cramped, messy studio apartment to show them, hiding my actual living situation, which, while modest, was comfortable and organized. They left satisfied that their assessment was correct, that I was meant to be a supporting player in Madison's story. My breakthrough came junior year when I developed an app that simplified database queries for non-technical users. It started as a class project, but I saw its potential and spent 6 months refining it. A Seattle startup acquired it for $50,000, my first real money, life-changing money that I told my family was a $500 prize for a student competition. I opened accounts at 3 different banks, spreading the money around, beginning what would become a complex financial structure designed to hide my wealth from those who felt entitled to it. Madison's law school journey began that same year, and the financial pressure started immediately. Every phone call home included updates about Madison's expenses, the specialized study materials, the networking events she simply had to attend, the summer programs that would give her an edge. My parents started dropping hints about family, helping family, about how lucky Madison was to have a sister in tech who could contribute. They never asked directly at first, just planted seeds of obligation they assumed would grow into compliance. Tyler was struggling through community college then, working nights at a fast food restaurant to pay for classes our parents deemed unnecessary for someone with his limitations. I watched him work himself to exhaustion for grades that came slowly but steadily, never complaining, never asking for what Madison received without question. I created an anonymous scholarship through his school, specifically designed for students with learning disabilities who showed determination despite challenges. He won it, of course, though he never knew his sister was behind the $5,000 that let him quit one of his jobs and focus on studying. My senior year brought a job offer from a tech company in Seattle, a position as a lead developer that came with a 6-figure salary and stock options. I told my family I had found basic coding work that would pay $40,000 a year, barely enough to live in an expensive city. They were disappointed but not surprised, confirming their belief that I was destined for mediocrity. Madison, meanwhile, was already discussing her future law firm prospects, despite being only in her first year of law school, our parents hanging on every word of her imagined future success. The week before graduation, my cousin Jennifer pulled me aside at a family barbecue. She had overheard our parents talking to our aunt about their children's futures. They had described Madison as their investment and me as their insurance policy. The exact words were that I would be the steady earner who could support Madison while she built her prestigious career. They had even discussed specific numbers, expecting me to contribute at least $30,000 annually to Madison's expenses once I was established. Jennifer thought I should know what was being said about me when I wasn't around. I thanked her and added this information to my growing file of evidence. Documentation I hoped I'd never need but suspected I would. Moving to Seattle after graduation felt like stepping into a new identity. I rented a beautiful apartment with views of the water but told my family I was sharing a cramped space with 3 roommates. My actual salary was $150,000 with bonuses that nearly doubled it. But I maintained the fiction of barely scraping by. Every request for money was met with carefully calculated responses, small amounts sent with elaborate explanations about how ED had to skip meals to afford it. I became an expert at poverty performance, even as my investment portfolio grew exponentially. The most painful part was watching Tyler continue to struggle while I had the means to help him openly. I found creative ways to support him secretly. Anonymous grocery deliveries when I knew he was between paychecks. Textbooks that mysteriously appeared in his mailbox, a laptop that was supposedly a donation from a local tech company but actually came from my personal funds. He never questioned the good fortune, too grateful to investigate, too humble to assume he deserved even these small miracles. 4 years into my Seattle career, the impossible happened on an ordinary Tuesday morning when our startup went public. I had joined as employee number 10, taking lower initial salary in exchange for equity that my family would have called worthless paper. That worthless paper transformed into $2 million overnight. A sum so staggering I sat in my apartment staring at the number on my screen, refreshing the page to make sure it was real. My phone buzzed with congratulations from colleagues, but I couldn't call the people who were supposed to celebrate such moments with me because they would only see dollar signs with Madison's name on them. I hired a financial advisor that week, a brilliant woman named Sarah who specialized in wealth protection and understood immediately why I needed to structure my assets carefully. We created trusts and LLCs, layers of legal protection that would prevent anyone from accessing my money without my explicit consent. She didn't judge when I explained my family situation, just nodded and said she'd seen it before. Families who viewed successful members as ATMs rather than individuals. Together, we built an impenetrable financial fortress while I maintained my facade of middle-class struggle. The consulting business started almost by accident when former colleagues reached out for help with projects. I charged premium rates for my expertise, working evenings and weekends on top of my regular job, adding another $300,000 annually to my income. I incorporated under a name that had no connection to my personal identity, accepting payments through business accounts my family could never trace. The money felt abstract. Numbers on screens that represented freedom rather than luxury, security rather than status. Madison's bar exam failures began that same year, each attempt costing thousands in prep courses and fees. Each failure met with our parents' insistence that it was just bad luck, that she was meant for greatness despite evidence to the contrary. After her third failure, the calls increased. My mother would cry about the loans, about how Madison was suffering, about how families should support each other through challenges. The number they mentioned kept growing. First $50,000 to help with loans, then $70,000 to give her a fresh start, then suggestions that I should simply take over the payments entirely since I was doing so well in tech. The manipulation was masterful in its consistency. Every conversation included reminders of Madison's potential, of how she had sacrificed to achieve her dreams, of how her success would elevate the entire family. They rewrote history, claiming Madison had always looked out for me, that she had protected me from bullies, helped with homework, been the perfect older sister. None of it was true. But they believed their revision so completely that questioning it seemed pointless. Madison had become less a person than a symbol of their aspirations, and I was expected to fund that symbol indefinitely. Tyler graduated that spring with his accounting degree, a moment our parents barely acknowledged beyond a Facebook post. He had job offers from 3 firms, having impressed recruiters with his methodical attention to detail and innovative approaches to problem-solving that came from years of developing workarounds for his dyslexia. When he called to share the news, I could hear the mixture of pride and hurt in his voice, the achievement tempered by our parents' indifference. I wanted to tell him about the house I was already researching for him, but the timing wasn't right yet. My real estate investments began quietly, purchasing properties in developing neighborhoods through my LLC, renovating them and renting them out for passive income. Within 2 years, I owned 5 properties worth a combined $3 million, all while telling my family that rent in Seattle was killing my budget. The lying became second nature, a protective reflex triggered by any financial discussion. When Madison complained about her studio apartment, I commiserated about my supposedly smaller space. When my parents worried about retirement, I expressed similar concerns about my own future. We were all actors in different plays, but only I knew it. The family meeting request came in December, my father sending a formal email about discussing family financial planning over the holidays. He attached an agenda that included items like family wealth consolidation and supporting each other's success. The corporate speak was almost laughable coming from a man who worked in middle management, but I recognized the seriousness behind the performance. They were preparing to formalize their claim on my income, to make explicit what had always been implied. I flew home for Christmas with dread sitting heavy in my stomach, knowing this would be a turning point. The meeting was scheduled for the day after Christmas, giving them time to soften me up with holiday sentiment first. Madison spent Christmas dinner discussing wedding venues she couldn't afford for a marriage to a boyfriend she'd been dating for 3 months. Our parents encouraging her delusions while Tyler sat silently, excluded from yet another family fantasy that didn't include him. The meeting itself was worse than it imagined. My father had prepared a presentation, complete with slides showing family financial goals and projected contributions from each member. My section was the largest, with 40% of my supposed $40,000 salary allocated to family needs, which meant Madison's loans. He had actually created automatic transfer authorizations for me to sign, assuming I would simply comply with this theft disguised as family duty. The most insulting part was the smile on his face, the pride in his voice as he explained how this would bring us closer together. I told them I needed time to review everything, that it was a lot to process. They seemed disappointed but not concerned, so certain of my compliance that delay was only a minor inconvenience. Madison hugged me afterward, thanking me for being such a supportive sister, already spending money she assumed was hers. Tyler wasn't even invited to the meeting, deemed irrelevant to the family's financial future. That night, I sat in my childhood bedroom, surrounded by participation trophies while Madison's achievements gleamed from the hallway, and I began planning my revelation. The spring semester brought Tyler's graduation approaching in 6 months, and with it, my opportunity to shatter the fiction my family had built around my life. I spent weeks researching the perfect property, flying back to Minneapolis in secret to tour houses near the accounting firm where Tyler would start working. The winner was a 3-bedroom craftsman in a quiet neighborhood, with hardwood floors and a backyard perfect for the family Tyler would someday build. $400,000 in cash, purchased through my LLC with closing scheduled for the week before graduation. Sarah, my financial advisor, helped structure the gift to protect Tyler from tax implications, while ensuring our parents could never claim any ownership. We created documents that made it explicitly clear this was a gift from sister to brother, not a family asset, not something that could be borrowed against or sold without Tyler's sole consent. I also had her prepare additional documentation, cease and desist letters and legal warnings that I hoped I'd never need but suspected would become necessary once my family discovered the depth of my deception. Madison's situation deteriorated rapidly that spring, her paralegal position at a small firm barely covering her expenses while she maintained the lifestyle of a successful lawyer. She had started dating Marcus, an investment banker she met at a networking event, and immediately began planning a future based on his money. Our parents encouraged this delusion, discussing wedding plans and house hunting as if the relationship wasn't just 3 months old. Every phone call home included updates about Madison's relationship, our mother gushing about finally having successful children, plural, as if my existence was conditional on Madison's proximity to wealth. The emails between my parents and Madison became more frequent and less subtle. My mother, not technologically savvy, often copied me on messages by accident, revealing their ongoing discussions about my finances. One particularly damaging thread discussed strategies for increasing my contributions, with Madison suggesting they claim a medical emergency to guilt me into providing more support. Another thread analyzed my social media, looking for signs that I was hiding assets, though my carefully curated online presence showed nothing but the struggling tech worker they expected to see. I scheduled meetings with estate lawyers, ensuring my assets were protected not just from current claims but from future ones. They helped me understand the concept of financial abuse, how families like mine used emotional manipulation to extract resources from successful members. The lawyer, an older woman who had seen every variation of family dysfunction, told me that my situation was common, that families often viewed successful members as communal property rather than individuals with their own rights and dreams. She prepared documents that would protect me while giving me options for how to reveal the truth. Tyler called one evening, exhausted from working double shifts to save for professional clothes for his new job. He mentioned, offhandedly, that our parents had suggested he continue living at home after graduation to save money, though they'd made it clear they would charge him rent. The same parents who had paid for Madison's apartments through law school expected Tyler to pay them for the privilege of sleeping in his childhood bedroom. The inequality was so blatant, so cruel, that I almost revealed everything right then, but I held back, knowing the revelation would be more powerful with an audience. My investigation into my family's finances revealed more troubling patterns. Through public records and some discreet inquiries, I discovered my parents had taken out home equity loans to fund Madison's education, betting their retirement on her future success. They had also opened credit cards in their names but given them to Madison, who had maxed them out on clothes and restaurant bills. The debt they had accumulated banking on Madison's success exceeded $200,000, and they were counting on my contributions to manage the minimum payments. 3 weeks before graduation, I received the most audacious request yet. My father called to inform me, not ask, but inform, that they would need $15,000 for Madison's bar exam prep course, the premium package that guaranteed success. He actually used the phrase family investment and said he knew I had been saving for something special, but this was more important. The casualness with which he tried to claim my money he didn't even know existed in the quantities I possessed, filled me with a cold resolve. I told him I would see what I could do, knowing that what I would do would change everything. The final piece fell into place when my mother accidentally forwarded me an email chain between her and Madison. They were planning an intervention for my selfishness at Tyler's graduation party. Having decided that my reluctance to sign the financial agreements was a form of rebellion that needed to be addressed publicly, they had invited extended family to witness this confrontation, believing public shame would force my compliance. Madison had actually scripted what she would say, a speech about family loyalty and sharing success that read like a hostage negotiation. They planned to corner me after Tyler received his diploma, when emotions were high and refusing would seem especially cruel. He had never asked for anything, never complained about the inequality, just accepted that Madison was the favorite and he was the afterthought. His humility and resilience made my decision feel even more right. He deserved this gift, not because he was family, but because he was a good person who had earned every opportunity through his own effort. Tyler's graduation day dawned bright and clear, one of those perfect May mornings in Minneapolis where the whole world seems to shimmer with possibility. I arrived at my parents' house at 9 in the morning, 3 hours before the ceremony, ostensibly to help with preparations, but really to position myself strategically for what was about to unfold. My Tesla, purchased just months earlier, was parked 3 blocks away while my old Honda Civic rental sat in the driveway, maintaining the illusion of my financial struggles right up until the moment of revelation. The house buzzed with the kind of energy that comes from hosting extended family, relatives arriving from Wisconsin and Iowa, cousins I hadn't seen in years gathering in the kitchen while aunts commandeered the food preparation. Madison held court in the living room, her new boyfriend Marcus at her side, regaling anyone who would listen with stories about her important work at the law firm, carefully omitting that she was still a paralegal who spent most of her time making copies. She wore a designer dress that probably cost more than Tyler's entire graduation outfit, our parents beaming at her as if she was the one graduating with honors. Tyler arrived after the ceremony, still wearing his cap and gown, his face glowing with quiet pride that our parents acknowledged with perfunctory congratulations before returning their attention to Madison's conversation about potential wedding venues. I watched him deflate slightly, the joy dimming as he realized that even this achievement, even graduating with a 3.8 GPA while working multiple jobs, wasn't enough to earn their focus. Our aunts and uncles made more effort, asking about his job prospects and plans, but the people who should have been celebrating him most were busy discussing Madison's hypothetical future. The party moved to the backyard where my father had set up tables and chairs, a spread of food that was elaborate by our family's standards but would be considered modest by Madison's new social circle. I helped serve, playing the dutiful daughter while watching my parents exchange meaningful glances, preparing for their planned confrontation. Madison kept checking her phone, presumably reviewing the speech she had prepared about family loyalty and shared success. The tension built like humidity before a storm, everyone sensing something was coming without knowing what. At 4 in the afternoon, my father clinked his glass and stood to make a toast. He began with genuine praise for Tyler, acknowledging his hard work and determination, but I could see him building to the transition. He started talking about family values, about how success meant nothing if it wasn't shared, about how the strong had an obligation to lift up those who had sacrificed for the greater good. His eyes found mine across the yard, and I knew he was about to launch into the intervention when I stood up and interrupted with a smile. "Dad, that's beautiful," I said, my voice carrying across the yard, and I couldn't agree more about family supporting each other. Which is why I have something special for Tyler. The surprise on my father's face was almost comical as I walked to my car, returning with the elegant box I had prepared. The entire yard fell silent as I approached Tyler, whose expression shifted from confusion to wariness, probably expecting some small token that would pale in comparison to Madison's usual gifts. "Tyler," I began, loud enough for everyone to hear, "you've worked harder than anyone I know. You've never asked for handouts, never complained about unfairness, never expected anything you didn't earn. You got yourself through college while working 2 jobs, achieved excellent grades despite challenges others couldn't imagine overcoming, and you did it all with grace and determination." I handed him the box, my hands steady despite my racing heart. "This is for you, from me, because you deserve to start your career without the burden of rent hanging over your head." Tyler opened the box slowly, his face changing as he recognized what he was holding. The keys gleamed against the velvet interior, the deed visible beneath them, the photo album showing every room of his new home. His hands started shaking as he looked through the pictures, seeing the beautiful craftsman house, the modern kitchen, the office perfect for his accounting work, the backyard where he could host his own gatherings. When he saw the address, just 15 minutes from his new job, tears started rolling down his face. "Candace," he whispered, then louder. "Candace, is this real? Is this actually real?" I nodded, and he pulled me into a hug that felt like years of isolation melting away. The yard erupted in gasps and exclamations, relatives pushing closer to see the photos, to confirm what seemed impossible. $400,000, someone whispered, and the number rippled through the crowd like wildfire. Madison's scream cut through the celebration like a knife. "What the hell is this?" She had pushed through the crowd, her face contorted with rage. "You bought him a house? A whole house? Where did you get that kind of money?" Before I could answer, my father's voice boomed across the yard, the words that would become infamous in our family history. That money was for her loans. He stood there, face purple with rage, pointing at Madison. "We had a plan. We discussed this." That money was allocated for Madison's education debt. The yard went completely silent, every relative staring at him as he continued his tirade. "You were supposed to help your sister, Candace. She's the one with the law degree, the one with potential. How could you waste resources like this?" My mother joined in, tears streaming down her face, but they weren't tears of joy for Tyler. "Candace, how could you do this to Madison? She's been counting on your support. We all have. This is a betrayal of everything we taught you about family." She actually used the word betrayal, as if I had committed some unforgivable sin by giving my brother a gift with my own money. Madison's reaction was the most telling. She didn't congratulate Tyler or express happiness for his good fortune. Instead, she turned to the assembled relatives and began her prepared speech, apparently deciding to proceed with the intervention despite the changed circumstances. "Family means sacrifice," she announced, her voice carrying the false authority of someone used to getting their way. "When one member succeeds, they have an obligation to lift up others. Candace knows I have student loans that are crippling my future. She knows our parents sacrificed everything for my education. And instead of helping, she throws money away on unnecessary luxury." The relatives stood frozen, processing the surreal scene of a family attacking one daughter for giving a generous gift to their son. Uncle Robert, my father's brother, was the first to speak. "Wait a minute. Are you actually angry that Candace gave Tyler a graduation gift? With her own money?" His confusion was evident, and it sparked others to voice similar sentiments. Aunt Patricia asked why Madison felt entitled to Candace's money, while Cousin Jennifer, who had warned me years ago, simply shook her head in disgust. Tyler finally found his voice, and when he spoke, years of suppressed hurt poured out. "Unnecessary luxury? I've been working since I was 16. I paid for my own college while you got a free ride. I've never asked anyone for anything, and the one time someone does something nice for me, you try to make it about you." He turned to our parents, his voice breaking. "Do you have any idea what it's like to watch you pour everything into Madison while treating me like I'm invisible? Candace is the only one who ever saw me, and you're angry at her for it." The moment had arrived to demolish every lie, every assumption, every delusion my family had built about my life and their entitlement to its proceeds. I pulled out my phone, connecting it to the Bluetooth speaker my father had set up for party music, and began playing the recording I had started the moment he began his toast. His words echoed across the yard. That money was for her loans, the planned intervention, the accusations of betrayal. The relatives shifted uncomfortably as they heard my parents and Madison discussing their plans to force me into financial servitude. "Since we're discussing family obligations," I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins, "let me share some facts. Mom, Dad, you calculated my projected income on spreadsheets when I was 18. I have the emails where you discussed taking 40% of my salary for Madison's expenses. You called me your insurance policy, not your daughter. You planned my financial future without ever asking what I wanted to do with my own money." I pulled up my laptop, which I had strategically placed on a nearby table that morning. The screen displayed my actual bank accounts, investment portfolios, and property holdings. "You think I make $40,000 a year? The truth is, my net worth exceeds $5 million. I've been a lead developer since leaving college, not the basic coder you told everyone I was. The startup I joined went public, making me a millionaire overnight. I own 5 rental properties in Seattle, run a consulting business that brings in $300,000 annually, and have investment portfolios that generate more passive income than Madison has ever earned. The silence was absolute. Madison's face cycled through disbelief, rage, and something that looked like physical pain. My parents stared at the screen, their minds trying to process numbers that destroyed their entire worldview. The relatives began murmuring, pieces of the puzzle falling into place, years of witnessed favoritism suddenly making sense in this new context. "You lied to us," my mother whispered, as if I was the betrayer in this scenario. "All these years, you lied about your success." The irony of her accusation would have been funny if it wasn't so tragically lacking in self-awareness. I had protected myself from their greed, and they saw it as a betrayal rather than self-defense. "I protected myself," I corrected. "Every time I achieved something, you either ignored it or immediately calculated how it could benefit Madison. When I got a scholarship, you asked if I could transfer it to her. When I got my first job, you asked when I could start contributing to her loans. You never celebrated my success, only saw it as a resource to be harvested." I turned to the relatives, many of whom had been fed a false narrative for years. "They told you I was selfish, that I refused to help despite family needing support. The truth is, I've been sending small amounts when pressed, claiming it was all I could afford." Meanwhile, Madison has failed the bar exam 3 times, works as a paralegal, not a lawyer, and has been living off credit cards our parents took out in their names. They've bankrupted their retirement betting on Madison's success that never materialized. Madison lunged forward, trying to grab my laptop, but Tyler stepped between us. "You stole from me," she screamed. "That money should have been mine. I'm the one who went to law school. I'm the one with potential. You're just some computer nerd who got lucky." Her mask had completely fallen away, revealing the entitlement that had been cultivated through 28 years of preferential treatment. "I earned every penny," I responded calmly. "While you were partying through undergrad on mom and dad's money, I was working 3 jobs. While you were failing the bar exam, I was building systems that companies paid millions to acquire. And Tyler," I gestured to my brother, who stood tall despite the chaos. "He earned his degree while working fast food, while you all acted like he didn't exist. He deserves this house because he's never expected anything from anyone." My father tried to regain control, his management training kicking in despite the personal nature of the crisis. "Candace, we can discuss this privately. This isn't appropriate for a family gathering." But I was done with private discussions that led to my exploitation. I pulled out the folder of documents Sarah had helped me prepare. "Actually, Dad, this is the perfect venue since you plan to publicly shame me into compliance. Here is what's going to happen. This cease and desist letter prevents you from contacting me about money ever again. Any attempts to access my accounts, which yes, I know you've tried through social engineering at my banks, will result in legal action. This document shows that you attempted to open joint accounts using my social security number without my consent, which is fraud." The revelation sent another shockwave through the gathering. Cousin Michael, who worked in banking, immediately understood the implications. "That's a felony," he said quietly, and my parents' faces went white. I hadn't planned to pursue charges, but they didn't need to know that. The threat was enough to establish boundaries they had never respected before. "As for you, Madison," I continued, turning to my sister, "I'm done pretending we have a relationship. You've treated me like an ATM you hadn't figured out the PIN for yet. Every conversation for the past 5 years has been about your needs, your dreams, your struggles, never once asking about mine. You didn't even know I was promoted to technical director last year because you never asked about my life beyond what it could provide for you." Marcus, Madison's boyfriend, had been silent throughout the confrontation, but now he spoke up. "Madison, you told me your sister was struggling, that your family was working class. You said you were helping support them." His voice carried a note of dawning realization. Madison turned on him, hissing that he didn't understand, that I had stolen her future. But he was already stepping away from her, seeing her true character for the first time. Tyler pulled out his phone and began scrolling through old messages. You want to talk about family support? Here are the texts from mom and dad telling me to figure it out myself when I couldn't afford textbooks. Here's them saying college might not be for everyone when I struggled with my learning disability. Here's Madison calling me the family embarrassment when I was working at McDonald's to pay for school. His voice grew stronger with each revelation. Candace secretly paid for my scholarship. Yeah, I figured it out eventually. She's the only one who ever believed I could succeed. Aunt Patricia stepped forward, addressing my parents with disgust evident in her voice. You had 3 children, and you only valued one. You ignored Candace's achievements and dismissed Tyler's struggles, all to pour everything into Madison. And now you're angry that Candace chose to help the child you neglected? What kind of parents are you? 6 months have passed since Tyler's graduation party, and the landscape of our family has transformed completely. I haven't spoken to my parents or Madison since that day, though they've attempted contact through every channel imaginable. First came the angry voicemails, then the tearful apologies that weren't really apologies but requests for money dressed in remorse. Then the letters sent through relatives, each one a masterclass in manipulation, suggesting that denying them access to my wealth was equivalent to abandoning family. Each attempt was documented and forwarded to my lawyer, building a case I hoped he'd never need to pursue but appreciated having as protection. Tyler's house has become a sanctuary for both of us, a place where we can build the sibling relationship we were denied growing up. Every Sunday, we have dinner together, sometimes just us, sometimes with his girlfriend Emma, who still can't quite believe the story of our family even after witnessing some of the aftermath. His accounting practice has flourished, his confidence growing with each month of stability that comes from not worrying about rent. Hess even started mentoring kids with learning disabilities, showing them that their differences can become strengths with the right support and belief. The ripple effects through our extended family have been fascinating to watch. Several cousins reached out with their own stories of witnessing the favoritism but feeling powerless to intervene. Aunt Patricia admitted she had suspected something was wrong when my parents would brag about Madison's achievements while barely mentioning their other 2 children. But she hadn't wanted to cause family drama. Now, she regularly checks in on Tyler and me, trying to provide the parental support we should have received all along. Madison's life has taken a dramatic downturn, though I take no pleasure in her struggles. Marcus ended their relationship immediately after the party, later sending me a message thanking me for inadvertently showing him who she really was before he made a costly mistake. Without his financial support and with our parents unable to continue funding her lifestyle, she's had to face reality for the first time. The last I heard through the family grapevine, she was still working as a paralegal, living in a studio apartment, and had finally stopped talking about taking the bar exam again. My parents' situation is perhaps the most tragic. The house of cards they built on Madison's anticipated success has collapsed entirely. They're facing bankruptcy from the loans they took out for her education, the credit cards they let her max out, and the home equity line they can't pay back. Several relatives have suggested they ask me for help, but even they understand why I won't provide it. They made their choices, bet everything on one child while neglecting the other 2, and now they have to live with the consequences. The most unexpected development has been my relationship with wealth now that I don't have to hide it. I've established a scholarship fund for students with learning disabilities, inspired by Tyler's journey. I mentor young women in tech, especially those from families that don't understand or value their career choices. I've even started a program that provides free coding classes to kids from low-income families, remembering how I had to teach myself because my parents wouldn't invest in my interests. 3 months after the graduation party, I received a letter from Madison that was different from the others. It was shorter, simpler, and for the first time, seemed genuine. She admitted that she had been raised to believe she was special, that the world owed her success, and that she had never learned to work for anything because it had always been handed to her. She said she didn't expect forgiveness or money, just wanted me to know that she finally understood the damage our parents' favoritism had caused all 3 of us. I didn't respond, but I kept the letter, a reminder that even golden children are victims of the pedestals they're placed on. Tyler and I have talked extensively about our childhood, processing the trauma of neglect and favoritism respectively. Hez helped me understand that my success wasn't just despite our family's treatment but in many ways because of it. Being ignored taught me self-reliance, being dismissed taught me to value my own judgment, and being treated as a future resource taught me to protect what I earned. Similarly, his struggles with our parents' low expectations taught him resilience and empathy that make him not just a good accountant, but a good person. The house I gave Tyler has become more than just a building. It's a symbol of recognition, of being seen and valued for who he is rather than who our parents wanted him to be. Hez painted the walls, planted a garden, and made it truly his own in a way that someone who's never had anything of their own can appreciate. When he sent me pictures of his first dinner party, hosting friends in his own space, I cried at the joy in his expression, the pride of ownership that our parents tried to deny him. I've also come to understand that my parents' behavior, while inexcusable, came from their own limitations. They could only see one path to success, through traditional education and prestigious careers. They couldn't understand that a quiet girl who liked computers could build an empire, or that a boy with dyslexia could become a successful accountant. Their narrow vision limited not just their children's lives but their own, leaving them bankrupt both financially and emotionally. The family dynamics have permanently shifted. Holiday gatherings are split now, with Tyler and me creating our own traditions while our parents and Madison maintain theirs. Some relatives attend both, carrying gossip between the camps, though the stories they bring suggest Madison and our parents have learned nothing from the experience. They still speak of my selfishness, still paint themselves as victims, still refuse to acknowledge the years of planning to steal what I had earned. My greatest victory isn't the money I protected or the boundaries I established. It's the relationship I've built with Tyler, the brother I barely knew growing up because our parents' favoritism kept us separated. We joke now that we're each other's chosen family, the siblings we picked rather than the one we were assigned. Emma says we have the closeness of twins despite our 5-year age gap, and in a way, we do. We're both survivors of the same dysfunction, just from different angles. The most profound lesson from this entire experience is that family isn't about blood or obligation. It's about mutual respect, genuine support, and celebrating each other's successes without calculating how to benefit from them. Tyler never asked for the house, never expected it, and tried to refuse it initially because he couldn't believe someone would give him something so significant without strings attached. That's real family, the kind that gives without keeping score, supports without expecting returns, and celebrates success without feeling entitled to share in its rewards. I think about the spreadsheets my parents made when I was 18, calculating my future income and their access to it. They never calculated the cost of their favoritism, the price of treating children as investments rather than individuals. They gained a few years of funding Madison's delusions but lost 2 successful children who would have gladly shared their lives, though not their bank accounts, with parents who actually saw and valued them. The story spread through our industry circles, becoming something of a cautionary tale about family and money. I've had other tech workers reach out, sharing similar stories of families who felt entitled to their success. We've formed an informal support group, sharing strategies for protecting ourselves while processing the grief of having families who see us as resources rather than people. It's sad that such a group needs to exist, but comforting to know we're not alone in these experiences. Looking back at that graduation party, I realize it was the first time in my life I stood up publicly for what was right, rather than what was expected. Giving Tyler that house wasn't just about him or even about exposing my family's dysfunction. It was about breaking a cycle of favoritism and exploitation that would have continued indefinitely if I hadn't acted. Tyler deserved recognition for his achievements, and I had the power to provide it. That's what real family does. They lift each other up without tearing anyone down. So, here's my question for you. Have you ever had to choose between family expectations and doing what you know is right? How did you handle the pressure to sacrifice your own success for relatives who felt entitled to it? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below, and if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about overcoming family dysfunction and finding your own path to success. Share this with anyone who needs to hear that it's okay to protect themselves from family members who see them as ATMs rather than individuals. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, you don't owe anyone the fruits of your labor just because you share DNA. Your success is yours to share or protect as you choose, and real family will celebrate your achievements without calculating how to profit from them.